Hey guys, my name is Manny and welcome back to EDM Pro Tips. Today's video is on studio monitors, and this is probably the biggest one that's going to get the most popularity out of all the videos in this little series here, because this is probably the most important part of your studio. This is essentially what you're listening to all your music through, and it's going to be how you're critically listening to all your mixes. So while they're not necessary to get a good melody or a good synth, that creating a cool drop synth or something, they're very important for getting your mix down right. So if you care about your mix down, you basically need good studio monitors. So so there's a lot I could potentially cover about things you should know, things you shouldn't know and stuff. But I'm only going to cover some of that stuff because otherwise you'll just get into this mess of too many different things that you'll kind of get caught up in, and you'll start looking for tons of different types of gear instead of focusing on the music and your production. So so the first thing I want to mention is I kind of talked about it in some of my earlier videos in the series here. Specs can lie. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter if you see two sets of studio monitors. One says it's got 35 hertz to 24 kilohertz, and the other one says it's got 10 hertz to I don't know, 50 kilohertz or something like that, something insanely high. You don't need to worry if one's got a smaller spectrum that it could reproduce audio over another one, because pretty much all of them are in the hearable range. And if you're paying a reasonable amount, then it doesn't matter what the specs say in that regard. So there's pretty much one spec that'll tell you a lot about the speaker, and that is the size of the cone, which is the speakers are split into two parts. You have the small part, which is called the tweeter, and the larger part, which is called the woofer. So if you've seen studio monitors, or you've seen someone take the front mesh off of a regular speaker, you kind of see that there's a tweeter and a woofer. And essentially, the size you want to look for is the diameter of the woofer. And now there's different tonalities to each of them. The smallest ones that you would possibly think about getting for a studio are 5 inches. Anything below that is like not enough. 5 inches, personally, I don't think it's enough for EDM, although some people can use a 5-inch monitor with a sub. We'll talk about subs later. But my suggestion is only do that if you feel like you don't want to spend a lot of money at all, because 5-inch speakers are relatively affordable compared to other ones, but the bass does not go very low. So you'll get a lot of the punch in the bass, but you won't be able to hear much sub, if any at all. I actually I went down to a Guitar Center, and I was checking out some of the monitors, and I went and I listened to kind of the 6-inch ones that I was planning on getting, and then just kind of for comparison's sake, I listened to the 5-inch ones, and the 5-inch ones had no sub. The kicks were very punchy and they hit really hard, but there was no sub bass. It was essentially non-existent. So that is my warning by way of 5-inch monitors. Yes, you can buy them. Yes, they're out there. Yes, they count as studio monitors, but they will not get you very good mixes in the low end. In the high end, they're pretty good. They actually work rather well, sometimes better than the larger speakers, but for the low end, they're useless pretty much. So, so my suggestion is at least go for 6-inch monitors, or go all the way up to 8-inch. Now, this is where things start to get tricky, because 5 inches pretty much across the board, you could know what the tone is going to be. It's going to be very punchy, and it's going to be kind of thin. But as you switch to other brands and you go up in size, the tone will change drastically. For instance, I have the KRK RoKit 6, which I recommend for a reason that I'll disclose later. But I just want to kind of mention these ones, despite the fact being they're 6-inch monitors, they actually have quite a bit of low end. So if you actually go up the line and you get the 8-inch KRK RoKits, they have too much bass. But when you go into other companies, if you get a 6-inch speaker, you might find it's a little thin. As well as you just kind of want to keep in mind that, like I said, the tone is different between various brands. So you need to look around and try to find the appropriate size for the brand. So like I said, in the case of RoKit, in the case of KRK, their RoKit studio monitor line you want to make sure that they're that you get the 6-inch ones and not the 8-inch ones, because the 8-inch ones have way too much bass, and it's just overwhelming. Like, the bass does go deep, but they have too much balance-wise. So it's kind of hard to deal with in that regard. On the other hand, if you go to something like Yamaha, their 5-inch ones are just like every other 5-inch one, kind of. You know, obviously there's going to be some differences. And then if you go up to their 7-inch ones, then the 7-inch ones behave a lot like the 6-inch KRK speakers. Despite the fact that they're an inch bigger, the Yamaha ones perform very similar to the KRK ones. Now, there's differences in tonality. I could say the bass in the RoKits, the KRK monitors, the 6-inch ones, it sounds a lot rougher and a lot more prominent, whereas the bass in the Yamaha 7-inch ones feels smoother in the low end. It doesn't feel as in your face, and part of the reason is because the bass port, which if you notice on the KRK speakers, has got like this big hole in the bottom of the front, whereas the Yamaha ones, they actually have a circular hole in the back of the speaker. That's about yay big. And so they're two different styles of monitors, and they create different tones. Now, it's also worth mentioning right now, I'm going to kind of go over some brands that are reputable. I am going to miss quite a few, I know, because I am not on top of too many brands. But the two biggest ones I recommend are KRK and Yamaha. I do not actually suggest KRK as an overall monitor. Just for the purpose of EDM, it's a good monitor. Yamaha is very well known for their monitor lineup. Mix engineers that are doing like rock or pop or different styles like that, not necessarily EDM. I'll talk about why I suggest KRK later, but I'm kind of saying KRK I suggest for EDM, but not for many other genres. And then there are some other ones. There are Mackie. Those ones are pretty good. There are Tannoy. I don't recall if that's the correct pronunciation, but it's like Tannoy or Tannoy, something like that. And then what was the final one? M Audio makes some good ones as well. They're not, I wouldn't consider them highly professional, but they are good ones. Now there are some other ones like Atom and stuff like that that make very high-end monitors, but I'm not going to talk about those for the sake of this video because I am in no position to talk about those monitors because I've never used them and I've never talked to anybody directly that has used them. So I'm mostly just talking about the prosumer monitors, like when you go out to a music store, the ones you'll find on the shelf. Now there are some Atoms out there, but they tend to be a lot more expensive, and I can't speak for the sound because I haven't heard them. Those are the ones that are going to give you a good sound for the money, and they're just going to be pretty good for EDM production in general. So I've talked about kind of the different sizes you want to get. Like I said, with KRK, you want to stick to their 6 inches and not go to the 8 inches because that's too much. And then I've talked about Yamaha, how their 7 inches are very close to the KRK 6 inches, but their 8 inches are much more popular because they have a lot fuller bass, but it's not overwhelming, and it goes down a lot deeper. So those are so if you want to get the best all-around monitor for if you're not sure if you're going to do EDM production or if you're just going to go kind of do mix work in other genres and everything, then my suggestion is get the Yamahas. But if you plan to do exclusively EDM, then I suggest as a starting point, get the KRK RoKit 6-inch monitors. Okay, before I get into as to why I suggest the KRKs, it's actually a very interesting reason. But before I get into that, I want to talk about subs, because I did talk about at the beginning of the video that 5-inch monitors kind of work, but you have to use a sub with them. This is where things get very difficult, because if you split up your system into a monitor and a sub, first of all, you have to find the ideal crossover point. Some of them have adjustable crossovers, some of them don't. So you need to keep that in mind when you're getting a sub, and either get one that is known to work well with your monitors or get one with an adjustable crossover so you kind of tune it. Now that said, subs are much harder to deal with when it comes to room acoustics. So if you have a small room, do not buy a sub. It will actually damage your mixes more than it will help them, because you cannot, you get a lot of slapback from the sub. The sub bass, it just kind of bounces around your room and you can hear things twice. So what you'll do is you'll turn down the sub in your mix, to get it so that it doesn't get that slapback anymore, and then it's not enough. So now there are ways to like adjust your room and stuff like that, but I don't think it's worth going into those because it's just way too much work for something you don't need to do when you're just getting started and you're just trying to get a decent mix. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you, yes, you need to acoustically treat your mixing location so that it sounds best and it doesn't get messed up with all the reflections. Yes, it is important, but it's not something you need to worry about off the bat. If you have good monitors, they'll serve you so much better than computer speakers and a treated room. Trust me. So, so my suggestion is get decent studio monitors, learn how to work with those, and if you feel like you're actually having problems with acoustics in your room, like if you listen to a professional track and you hear this weird bouncing around sound or like weird reverb, then you want to worry about it. But otherwise, I don't suggest getting into acoustics that early just because it's a very difficult topic because a lot of people say use this, don't use that, use this, don't use that. There will be conflicting information and you won't know what to do in the end. So, so try not to get caught up on that early on. So that's my suggestion as to why you should avoid a sub, because then you have to get into all that because the subs are so hard to manage. Now, back to monitors in general. Why do I suggest the KRK RoKit 6s? They're the industry standard. And I don't know what the reason for that is, but essentially, I can't nail down a percentage, but I know a lot of producers started on the KRK RoKit 6-inch monitors, and off the top of my head, it would be Jay Hardway, Martin Garrix, and I believe, oh, who was it? Was it, I can't remember, but there are a whole bunch of producers that started out with those monitors, and they were able to get pro on them. Now, obviously, they may have gone into a studio, a professional studio, to listen and do like the final master of their tracks or something like that. But it just kind of shows you they were able to get to the point of being a professional while their in-home studio monitors were the KRK RoKit 6 inches. And even more so, if you actually, Martin Garrix just recently on his Instagram account posted a picture of him working, he's just kind of working outside on a track, and he was using the RoKit 6-inch monitors. Now, that doesn't say a lot about how the quality of his track turned out in the end, or if that was his final mixdown. But the important thing is, he was doing something on those monitors, which isn't like a big excuse most of the time. It's like, oh, so-and-so was painting a picture and used this paintbrush for 10% of it. That's not what I'm referencing to here. What I'm referencing to here is he was starting a mix or working a little bit on a mix, and he could trust those monitors enough to where he didn't mind using them for a part of the mix to kind of get things working. So, and also I believe his track, Animals, his most popular track ever, I think that was mostly, if not entirely, done on the RoKit 6 inches. And that one basically, actually I gotta say, the mixdown is very nice and it got extremely popular. So I kind of just says how far you can get with the monitors. And a lot of people say, oh, don't get the RoKit 6 inches, they're hi-fi monitors, they're not actually like real mixing monitors. But I propose to you, if there are these people that actually were using these monitors for their productions and they were able to get into the professional field while using them, even if their final mixdowns weren't on them, it was enough for them to get into the professional field. So, because they weren't using the $1,000 monitors before those labels knew them. They had to use something in order to become a producer. So it really shows you that these monitors might not be the best monitors, but first of all, they're affordable, and second of all, it's actually workable to become a pro on them. And that's extremely important because if you get the monitors and you're blaming the monitors saying, well, they're not actually like the $1,000 monitors, so my mixes don't have to end up sounding all that great because I'm not using as good equipment, you have no excuse, because a lot of these people started on these monitors and got to the point to where they could be picked up by a label and then continue onwards. So there's really no excuse to bash these monitors, because even if their sound, you need to learn their sound signature and things need to get changed, like in your final mixdown. they are good enough to where you could actually get your tracks to the point to where when you send them to a label, the label will not be disgusted by the mixdown. They'll actually be able to listen through the mix and hear your song and not worry about things sounding absolutely nasty. So, so it's a very reputable monitor for just getting started on, if nothing else. Even if you have like 5-inch monitors, my suggestion is then your next upgrade might want to be the KRK RoKit 6s, because like I said, they're used by a lot of producers and they have a lot more bass than 5-inch monitors. And that's partially because of the front-facing bass port. The bass gets sent right out in front of you, and they have a little bit of bigger woofer than a 5-inch. So that's kind of what causes the larger amount of bass. So so that's one of the 2 reasons as to why I suggest getting those. The second reason is a lot of producers have used those, if nothing else, for DJing, because they're actually used not only for producing, but they're also used as DJ monitors inside a inside like a DJ booth for some sort of radio stream or something like that. You can kind of see them around. I've seen a couple professional DJs. They're just in like a studio doing a mix over the internet or over the air, and what they actually have behind them is the KRK RoKit 6 inches. So it shows you that a lot of people know the sound of those monitors as well. So if you're doing a collaboration or you were sending a track to someone, they might be listening through those, which would be the same ones that you have. Or if someone came over to your studio to do a collaboration, they'd be used to those monitors. They wouldn't have to relearn the sound signature of your monitors, so they can know, you know, if things are sitting in the right spot. They're just kind of used to that sound. So that's the other reason. Not only is it a good thing to start with, but it's kind of a well-known signature sound because it's so widely available. Now, that said, there are 2 different versions of the KRK RoKit 6s that are worth getting. The 2nd generation and the 3rd generation. The 1st generation is nowhere near the 2nd and 3rd. From what I've heard, the 3rd one is a slightly refined version of the 2nd one, but personally I purchased the 2nd one because that one is the one that really made it to be the industry standard for EDM. And the 3rd one, while it's apparently very similar in sound signature, it's just a little bit more refined. It hasn't passed the test of time yet, so that's why I didn't go for that one. Now, that said, it's kind of hard to find the 2nd generation RoKit 6-inch monitors. So, so if you can't find the 2nd generation, or you would just like to go see if you could get that little bit more refined sound, go for the 3rd generation. Both will serve you well. I could guarantee you on that one. The only reason I chose the 2nd generation was because that's what I have seen in a lot more studios of EDM artists, and it's kind of stood the test of time. So so that's kind of pretty much what you need to know when you're looking for monitors. Like I said, you know, the top one for EDM is kind of KRK, the RoKit 6s. Their 5s are kind of used by EDM artists, while their 8 inches are less used by EDM artists. So I would pretty much just shoot for the 6-inch RoKit KRKs, or go for a different size from a different brand. So with the case of Yamaha, their 8 inches, I've listened to them before. They're very nice. The 7 inches sound a lot nicer than the RoKit 6 inches, but the 6 inches kind of give more of a characteristic EDM tone to EDM tracks. It's up to you which you end up choosing, and I kind of gave you the 2 criteria, whether or not you're going to be exclusively EDM or you're going to be doing different styles as well. It's up to you, but those are my 2 top suggestions. And if you could find other monitors from other brands, or you get a chance to listen to them, which is my biggest suggestion, like I said, in my first or second video in the series or something, go in and actually listen to the monitors before you end up buying them, if you can, so you kind of hear your favorite tracks and ask yourself which set of speakers best represents what I'm used to hearing this track as. So choose a song, just listen to it on as many different speakers as you could find, and as many different headphones as you can find, and if you know somebody with live sound systems, do it on those as well. So you just know the sound that is beneath the speakers for that track, and then when you go in and listen on monitors, you can tell which one is like best representative of the original sound. So that's pretty much it. I don't think I have anything else to cover. Acoustic treatment is not something I want to go into because it gets extremely expensive, very fast, and it's extremely confusing as well. In fact, and with all my tracks, I have not done any acoustic treatment. So you can kind of tell that while acoustic treatment does make a big difference in your ability to critically listen to things, at the same time, not being acoustically treated this is not going to kill your mix. It's just going to make it a little bit more difficult to really hear what's going on. So don't worry about acoustic treatment. Don't think that's going to drastically improve your mixes. It will just make mixes easier, and not by a huge margin either. Mostly it just makes bass and the high end a little bit more manageable. So it's not that big of a deal. But anyway, hopefully that was enough. If you guys have any questions, I know this is one of the situations where you guys are going to ask, well, I have the Tannoy 5 inches, or I have the M Audio, I don't know what the next one up is, but you say I have M Audio ones with a sub, and then you ask me, are those good enough? My answer is, do you feel they're good enough? If you go and listen to other monitors, can you tell instantly there's a difference in your mix? So that's my suggestion. If you know anybody with monitors, or you know a store nearby that has studio monitors on display, check out your mixes, check out the songs you're used to, and if it makes a big difference compared to the speakers you have, then it may be time to upgrade. But once again, don't upgrade just because you think it'll move you forward. Upgrade when you feel you're really ready for it. I'm not going to be able to help you that much in regards to oh, is this brand good? Is this model good? Because from what I've seen around, I kind of just went with the RoKit 6-inch monitors. So I didn't do too much listening around. I just did a comparison between RoKit and Yamaha, or KRK and Yamaha, I guess, just because I heard those were the two top ones. Given that the RoKits were more for EDM, and that was kind of the top one in that field, but the Yamahas are pretty much overall the most popular monitors that mix engineers will get when they're starting out and they're actually building their studio. So that's why I compared those two, just kind of hear the difference. And I ended up deliberately choosing the 6 inches just because it felt like it better represented what the artist wanted me to hear, even though it didn't sound clearer and more precise and more accurate. It felt like the artist was really, the impact that the artist was trying to make was showing through a lot better. So that's why I ended up going with those. But like I said, for you, it can go either way. Just keep in mind that those two are up there for a reason, and those two are probably your best bet if you're just looking in for monitors. If you're looking for upgrades, it's a whole different situation. But if you have 5 inches, I suggest going to anything bigger. If you really don't want to move your monitors, then you could just add a sub to that. But if you don't have monitors at all, I suggest getting something that's kind of in the middle, like the 6 or 7 inch, so the RoKit 6 or the HS7s, and those are ones that'll probably be a good target one for your first ones to get, because if you spend the money on the 5-inch ones, you'll probably just have to upgrade relatively soon anyway. So those are probably the first two I would suggest for primary ones. And then if you were upgrading from something, I couldn't help you much, but my suggestion is some of the 8-inch monitors out there are used more widely because 8-inch is kind of the sweet spot for good monitors. Now, when you get up into midfield monitors and stuff like that, which are completely different from near-field monitors, which is what I'm talking about, and it's the ones that you'll find in places like Guitar Center and other places like that that sell monitors. You'll mostly find near-field ones, but midfield ones are a completely different story, and those ones are more for the huge professional studios that are like, the studio itself costs millions of dollars to make. So that's just something to keep in mind. Near-field monitors are kind of what you're looking for. And in the case of EDM, I just kind of suggest a forward-facing bass port, unless you got an 8-inch. If you have an 8-inch forward-facing bass port, might not do you good, it might do you good, it depends on the brand. So that kind of makes it difficult, but I gave you my two top suggestions and it should be good. And then, so One thing to also keep in mind is if check where the bass port is, or if it has a bass port at all, because that can drastically change the sound. If it has a bass port on the front, the sound's going to be coming. The bass is going to be a lot more crunchy, and it's going to be a lot heavier. Whereas if it's coming out the back, it'll be a lot smoother and a lot more precise. Except if you have it coming out the back, you are going to need some sort of acoustic treatment up against your wall so that it doesn't just ricochet off and just kind of slap you in the face with the bass, because it kind of gets off time and it sounds bad. You'll want some sort of some sort of padding behind your monitor, so it kind of goes into that and gets absorbed and dispersed a little better. So it kind of fills the space in front of you instead of just ricocheting and hitting the space where you're sitting and listening. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys like that. I don't know if this was a lot of rambling, a lot of talking about specs. It's a little bit difficult for me to gauge because it's one of those things where I'm kind of telling you guys, get this or this. But that's just, in my experience, kind of what I heard. Like I said, the biggest thing you need to do is go out and listen to the monitors. Once you do that, you'll know for sure. But if you don't know where to start, or you don't have anywhere nearby that you could actually check it, then just go for those two suggestions, because they will be so much better than any computer speakers you'd ever have. And the KRK RoKit 6s and the Yamaha HS7s are going to be they're going to be quite a bit better than 5-inch monitors as well. So so just keep that in mind. And but anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.